If you love Arizona real estate or the opportunity to move around our beautiful state, this podcast is for you. Welcome to Iconic Estates, presented by Russ Lyon Sotheby's International Real Estate, for people who love luxury and the opportunity to live in the pristine desert. I'm your host, Renee Dee, and I'll be with you for each episode. On the pod today, I've got CP Drewett, who will talk with us about the relationship between strong architecture and the world of real estate. Mike Balzotti, Director of Education for Russ Lyon Sotheby's International Realty, explains the current market conditions in Arizona. And then we talk with Josh Shaver, Global Real Estate Advisor for Russ Lyon Sotheby's International Real Estate, and he'll share with us how he turned his hometown into his successful real estate career. Let's get started. Well, CP Drewett, this is super fun to have you on the Iconic Estates podcast today.
It's great to be here.
I'm really glad to have you here. So we've done a bunch of different podcasts together, and you are one of my most favorite architects ever, and top architect, award-winning architect. What I want to talk about today is, where does architecture and real estate intersect?
Sure. I mean, one begets the other, for sure. Without architecture, you have no real estate. But I think there's a level of, specifically, we're talking residential architecture, but
yep.
I think there's certainly some commodity type housing that's great, but then there's true architecture, true design, which starts entering this bespoke, really unique, one-of-a-kind types of real estate properties.
Yeah, one-of-a-kind. Like, you can't, it's hard to even find comps for it.
Yeah.
It's that unique.
And then, there's the architecture that's truly lot responding. And I think that's at least what I do. So we have owners and lots and, all these other factors, but ultimately, I think most architects, we all are really responding to the site conditions, and that really is where most of the architectural sort of the concept and direction is born from.
Yep, starts there, and then it's a collaboration with a really incredible client.
Right.
And we're starting to see over the last couple of years, like, I know some of the things that are sitting on your drawing board, and they're unbelievable, really incredible. And you've been doing exquisite properties for a very long time. So how would you describe the kind of buyers that are responding to a house that is very architecture forward?
So oftentimes what we do doesn't trade. We'll do a home that might stay within a family lineage for some time. But what I'm seeing now, and we do speculative properties and we get involved with that. But I think because our city's growing, and along with the population growth, it creates this new bell curve of architectural appreciation, so to speak. I think that our buyers are becoming remarkably more discerning, and they're coming in loaded with a greater appreciation for design and architecture. And I think actually in all aspects of what's happening right now, design is becoming more forward. And I don't care, product development, I don't want to get off, and on a tangent, but I think everything seems to be more design focused now rather than your basic product lineup.
Yeah, and I think part of that comes with working on luxury properties too, because there's also the luxury to really lean into the design focus too. It's interesting. I had a conversation earlier today with a guy out of New York who's a travel marketer, and he was talking about what's happening in the hotel space and how hotels are becoming more design forward, and even recruiting, big name people, well-known designers to actually be designing the hotels because people are liking that. And so I imagine from time to time you have a client that comes in and says, "Hey, I was traveling and I saw something."
Exactly.
So what's that experience?
Culture.
Yeah.
And I think even seeing I'm old enough to say this now, our younger generation, and you see how they're living, and their greatest thirst, I think, is culture and sense of place and which I think creating the culture and then sort of creating lifetime moments, I think that really feathers into the travel industry.
Mm-hmm.
And so hotels are really trying to create more of a sense of place, and so that people can uniquely respond to it.
Mm-hmm.
And architecture and real estate isn't different. I think what's a house, what's a home,
I like that.
and then how do you invest yourself to live in a space, and how do you align with it? And like I said earlier, people are becoming more discerning, but maybe a little bit more demanding on what's important and not as passive. And our community for a long time was second home, right?
Right.
Like we were, because it was such a tour. Like we're still a tourist destination.
Yeah.
But the mentality behind that was driven by developers, a lot of it, and that's great, and there's a place for it. But it's become a place of more permanence for
Mm-hmm.
people that are coming here for whatever reason is bringing people to the valley here. But in doing so, they want a sense of place rather than an opportunity.
Yep. I feel like we're becoming a little bit more of a global destination, for sure, a national destination. So people are coming from all over to say, gosh, you could live anywhere. Why wouldn't I want to live in Arizona? And then, our incredible climate affords all these incredible things, which is really one of your biggest fortes, which is this indoor-outdoor living experience.
Oh, I'm a spoiled brat with the climate. We have the other places that we work, it's formidable. I mean, you look at you look at the Midwest, which has a mild summer compared to us, but even though it's hot, I mean, there's a level of tolerability to it. But winter, like a really, really heavy winter, that's
yeah.
I mean, that's a different sort of a situation. Like you're inside, because it's just too cold. I mean, you just can't really exist outside. So, but yeah, it's such a joy to be able to engage indoor outdoor space. And you're right. I think we are becoming that destination place, and that's through the development of our cultural centers, which is sort of that's the natural progression of cities, because our city is starting to grow up.
Yeah.
And we've got museum districts, we've got design districts, and all these music district, art districts. So once these things start developing, then people start clustering around that.
Right.
And that's definitely happening. And then the food and beverage scene is really exciting. What's happening. All of that really equipping us to be that global destination, as you said.
And I think people are finding that, and they're coming here and saying, gosh, this is such a fun place to live. I don't want it to be my second home anymore.
Exactly.
I want it to be my primary home, and then I'm going to have a second home someplace else, or maybe a third home someplace, but I'm going to really invest in Arizona. Yeah. So back to kind of the relationship with architecture and real estate. So people are coming here, and we're finding that people who have had a lot of success in life are moving here, and they're bringing a lot of resources to town, and they're building really very, very special homes. And you're working on some of the coolest things that I've seen.
It's such a pleasure.
Does it feel like a surprise? Like, where did this all come from?
It's really exciting. I don't want to think too hard about it, but I feel, it's definitely a blessing for everyone in the design industry right now, because we're being afforded opportunities. Well, it's new, and you look at, again, maybe competing cities, competing commerce centers, and then you look at Phoenix. It's an amazing hub here, and there's so much at arm's reach. So yeah, the people moving in here, and the means that have come in, and And again, back to that discerning clientele, it's driving truly bespoke architecture.
Are your clients literally asking you for different things than they asked you 10 years ago?
Yes and no. And to sound, further, I said I'm a brat because of being able to design this indoor-outdoor space. I'm fortunate that I'm at a place right now in my career where our clients don't really want to get in the way. They really want me to express myself. So that's great.
Yeah.
But aside of just meat and potatoes programming, we're getting definitely some differences. And I'd say one of the largest shifts that I've seen in, this bespoke housing community that we're in is health and wellness.
Oh, yeah. So what are clients asking for there?
Just absolute soup to nuts, from treatment rooms to cold plunging, infrared saunas, custom infrared saunas. There's a lot of people that are doing yoga and cardio, very advanced weight training. I think more people are more alert and more aware, and maybe that's part of being in the wake of COVID. Mm-hmm. There were multiple responses to COVID, be it positive or negative. We'll say positive on one hand. I do think there were a lot of people that got focused on wellness.
I think so too.
And they had to do it at home, and they learned how to do it at home. They learned how to do it smart. And then there was a lot of information exchange that happened. And I happen to think that health and wellness I think we're all much more educated now than we were 5 years ago.
I totally agree. Totally agree. And, even, and I did a whole podcast on this. This is not where you want to get your health information, is Instagram. Because Instagram is talking about this all the time, what I think it's doing is raising the conversation. I'm not going to go on Instagram to get my health advice. I'm going to talk to my doctor, or I'm going to talk to trusted resources. But there's so many wellness topics that are all over Instagram that never used to be on social media. And it's causing us to ask questions, should I be doing this? What should I be doing? Is this right? Is that wrong? And it's got just, the narrative is just really grown. Yeah. And I think that's been a huge thing. And you're right. I think after COVID, people were at home. But then, isn't it the ultimate luxury that you can live your life in your home, the most important place you're going to be, in a really healthy way? It seems like the ultimate luxury to me.
It is. And I was on another, I guess, forum, and this notion of health came up, and there was an interior designer that was also sitting on this board with me, and he was challenging all of us encouraging us to right size space, and to not be lazy minded with regard to what's required for a wellness space. Because we can be, sometimes I broker excessiveness. I think yes, I do. I'm guilty. But to truly right size a space and consider the use, that's freeing. And then I think that also gives way to multi-use type spaces, where there's a merging of maybe audio video or office or working environment, or I think there's a lot of boundaries. There's a lot of reaching across boundaries there. But back to your question on, I definitely think wellness has been a big priority. And then I didn't think I would see it, because they did phase out for a little bit. And I try not to latch on to trends, but in the mid to late 90s, maybe early 2000s, theaters were a really big
Right.
deal. They're back, and
Wow.
I think
Wow.
I think that's I think also a response to COVID, because we were home and we got used to that. We got spoiled, and we all like our own popcorn or whatever it might be. But also technology and streaming media, the way we look at programming is or whatever it is, or I use the word content, because there's so much content, whether it's this podcasting. I know this is all that some people engage in is podcasting.
Yep.
And then there's foreign films, and there's, whatever social media outlet there is. Then there's, traditional movies, but it's all at an arm's reach. And,
Everything.
So I think that the way that we are engaging audio videos different and becoming more expected in a home, that it's something that's tailored a bit nicer. And on our higher end bespoke homes, almost every house we're doing now has a theater, and I didn't see that coming.
So interesting. So interesting how things kind of phase in and phase out, and people, have the different things that they're looking for. When you think about architecture and real estate, I would naturally, because I'm a big fan of architecture, I would naturally think that a house that has architectural excellence would fetch a better price. Do you feel like you see that? Do you have your clients saying that they're seeing that?
Yes, I'm told that. I'm fortunate that categorically, our work has fallen into that, and I've been told that. I'm not touting myself, but I definitely think that someone that has truly curated a beautiful composition on a site, that was born from the site, that was born from logic that was generated from the site, its sense of place and belonging and agelessness. It's something that could be, hopefully very indigenous to our desert and climate. I think all of that will definitely help fetch high, and expect that it would be something that would be seen monetarily.
Yeah, see value. I mean, I can validate for you that I've literally seen real estate listings that would say, it's a CP Drewett house. And we have an entire community that understands what that means. And so I think that's an exciting place to be in your career, that people are promoting that. But the other thing too is, I think, from an architectural standpoint, what's interesting is you've done such a great study of, as you're saying, the site and things like that, but you're also thinking of space planning and use. So if you're going to buy a really wonderful piece of architecture, you're going to have a house that's easier to live in, more enjoyable to live in, something that's really promoting this lovely lifestyle.
Yeah.
So you've got a real advantage to that. Something that's poorly designed. I mean, you've got the kitchen over here, and you've got the outdoor grill over there, and it makes no sense, and it's super annoying. And so when you have a house that has that just beautiful life can unfold, with that as the stage, there's a great value to that.
Absolutely. And it garners confidence. Whether it's us, great. There's other remarkable architects and interior designers and builders. We have a great community.
We do.
And then you see a team that's lined up, and then because of the design team, consequently, it sort of defines the aptitude of the builder and the construction team and everyone that was involved. It really helps out with buyer confidence, and I think that whole composition's very helpful.
Yeah. One of the things I wonder is, as it relates to real estate, I know this is something that you've even gotten involved in. So how do you take a look at, you work with a lot of fantastic clients, and then sometimes you actually are designing homes that you're presenting to the community for sale. How did that evolve?
I think a little bit, not to sound maybe a little bit out of frustration, because I've seen speculative homes that were done that were maybe this plays a little bit to your hand here, but so many homes are only focused on profit, and there's so much more. So that everything's a risk. So if you're going to build something on a speculative basis, it's a risk. So what risk tolerance do you have? But my tolerance is to do something quality. And I've seen, great design work fall short maybe before, when it was taken to a speculative type project where, every single decision is based upon the end game on profit, where
right.
I think if you focus on building something that's more bespoke, at the end game then would be the comparative analysis of something that's something that was a build-to-suit that
right.
And those seem to trade differently than a speculative home. So that's sort of what I've been trying to do, is to get involved with that and do our own developing, because then we have some control on how we're informing the built landscape here.
Well, and I love that part. And we could have a whole other conversation, which we won't go into, of, is it right for somebody to build a spec house and not build it at the quality level that it should be built at? We could have a whole conversation about that. But what is really exciting is I love that you're taking a look at that to say, hey, listen, our brand really values the quality. And if we've got to build it ourselves, and we're going to build it ourselves to make sure that some of these, ready-made homes are available at a very high quality, so you can move in and say, okay, well, this is great. I don't have to replace the kitchen. This is a wonderful kitchen and the whole thing. And people need inventory. They need houses to move into.
I do believe that good design can exist at every level.
Yep.
It doesn't just have to be the rarefied air of, multi-million-dollar homes. It does not. I mean, we've done very poignant, beautiful design work for build-to-rent products, that are, it's a more, like a bit of a, let's say, a clever approach to solving the riddle of how do we build something at a certain price point but still make it stunning and beautiful. I think everyone has the right to live within great design. Sometimes the smaller, more compacted, they take more time to think through and dig into. But I don't know. I think great design can exist everywhere, and then I do think that it will help fortify pricing.
Yep. I love that. I agree that everybody deserves great design, and to the extent that you can make it available. And it is a more challenging thing when you have such a limited space. So we were talking a little bit about the design community, just to kind of wrap some of this up. As people are moving here to Arizona, you and I have talked about this before. I mean, we are really proud of this design community.
Yeah.
Over the last maybe 20, 25 years that you've been in and out of here, and I've been in here, and what have you seen evolve? Because I am so impressed and excited about our design community.
Yeah, I think that people, in the design community have all established their own autonomy, rather than, sort of following masses. I think that people have really, I think there's some really unique, there's some architects that are doing very clear, poignant architecture that is their pure expression, and whose work it is. And that's not always the goal, but I guess my point is everyone's they're writing unique symphonies. Like they're doing their own work, and it's sort of, as I said earlier, when we were developer driven, it was a little more formulaic. And the bottom line is, you know, as a designer, you got to get a project. And to get a project, it's a service industry. There's only so much that we can push the boundaries before we simply don't get the jobs.
Right.
So, I mean, within that framework, you get the jobs, but all comprehensive, there's this new great discerning clientele, new opportunities, and it's afforded everyone to really grow. And I always push collaboration and great relationships here, and I think we have that. Everyone's very, I feel like, cooperative, and we all root for each other. We all are happy when we see someone else do great work, so it's a really healthy environment. And I think it's just awesome to be able to work in that type of a framework.
It's awesome. Well, and it's awesome to be in this kind of a community when you do see that collaboration and you see that people are working to make other people better.
Yeah.
And that it's got that whole positive vibe. I love going to some of our networking events and I see the architects are all talking to the architects and the designers are all talking to the designers. And that's not that it's a perfect community, right? Everything.
Sure.
But, you know, the general sense, and, you know, do we see this in all markets? Not always. And so I'm really proud of our design community. But I think, again, to kind of bring it all back to home, what does that mean for people who want to move here and want to own homes here and who want to build homes here? Wow, you could potentially have a really great experience and end up with a really wonderful piece of work with your amazing home and an amazing team that you could work with.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think it's a daunting task to make that decision. And I'd say 10 years ago, you could probably stub your toe pretty bad. But today, I mean, there's so much talent here that I think the design community is affording a lot of options. And, you know, we don't get them all. But I feel like maybe this makes more sense. We have enough talent in our city now that if I don't get a project, I think a lot of times it's about chemistry. And fine. Great. If you found someone that you align with and you can work with. But I don't think we had that many options here, you know, 10, 15 years ago. I think that it was sort of a smaller offering of competent design professionals here. But now it's abundant.
It's really cool.
Yeah.
It's a really exciting time to be here. And I hope for everybody who's currently in the process of building a home or somebody who wants to take advantage of the opportunity to buy something that is already built, which is kind of the easy button, but built by a wonderful builder, designed by a wonderful architect, and, you know, has had a wonderful, you know, interior designer involved in the project. You know, I think it's the best of times.
It really is.
Mike Balzotti, the numbers guy for Russ Lyon. We've got some good stuff to talk about today.
Oh, boy.
Oh, boy. I know. So this topic is actually so interesting that we've even sort of pre-discussed this a little bit, and I'm really excited to hear what you have to say. So a lot of interesting things happening in the market, and you've been doing just a great job of keeping all of us up to date on the latest numbers and trends, but things are shifting a little bit. So what are you seeing right now?
Well, a phrase I'm fond of is ebb and flow.
Yeah.
So now there seems to be surge happening.
Yeah.
You know, so things are surging, and with no clear direction in terms of, it's hard to prognosticate, I guess. And markets don't like uncertainty. Stock market doesn't like uncertainty. Real estate market doesn't like uncertainty. Clients don't. So we have to navigate that.
Right.
And there are some anchors that are really helpful for us, for me, trying to articulate it and give talking points to the folks that rely on me for that kind of information.
Yes.
And no small anchor for us is where we live. the Valley of the Sun has some phenomenal statistics and prognostication associated with it, both demographically and economically. Elliot Pollock, a local economist, talks about how, people think people go to where the jobs are, but actually jobs follow people.
Yes.
And so people want to be here, hence all this infrastructure, and then pile on the tech stuff. Probably everybody's heard the rumors of just all the stuff coming to the valley.
The new Silicon Valley is what they're calling it. Yeah. So we talk each time we're together about, is the market going up? Is it going down? Is it steady? What's the new word this week?
Transitional.
Transitional. Okay, well, so what does that mean?
Well, it depends on who you're talking to and the price range you're talking to, but basically broad brush. And I tend to rail against the broad brush because markets are local markets, and people don't buy markets. When they buy homes, they're buying subdivisions and price ranges. So with that distinction, the thing that really gets your attention is how it's relatively stable right now. There's modest appreciation in most of the markets. But then when you get into the uber rarefied air of like 10 million plus, which we didn't even have 10 million plus as a category a few years ago.
Right.
That market where there's now currently like just over 100 listings, over $10 million.
It's amazing.
Yeah, you look at the year over year appreciation and it's like off the charts. So that's a real standout. And so the really smart folks in terms of prognosticating what the future looks like, what they see, that was a big intro, what they see is relative stability. And then they see what's going on right now kind of working out to where they see another run of amazing appreciation out about 2 years forward. So if that holds, yahoo. But in the meantime, you can always spin it different ways. Right. Affordability remains pretty good. And the concern that people might have in a time of uncertainty is softening prices. And in point of fact, we do see some of that. Mm-hmm. Again, it depends on, you got to be competitively positioned. Another reference to a past.
Yep, another reference to another podcast.
It all ties together. Yeah, so, that 5-year forecast, and I know you have the chart on that, that is a relatively recent addition to our sort of arsenal of prognostications that we can point to and say, we don't have a crystal ball, but we can look at trends and we can look at where people that are banking on, they're looking for,
right?
Yeah, they're putting out their money,
right?
And so that tends to be as good as it gets.
Right. It's an exciting time to sort of see that there could be an opportunity where, we're not falling off of a cliff, and that you could feel comfortable in making that real estate investment.
Yeah, well said. But the only thing I would add to that and build on that would be that, when you look at the category of sellers, the good news is they're going to be able to sustain those huge equities that they've built up. Mm-hmm. And from a buyer that might be concerned about the future, again, to the extent that not only this bank grade prediction, but the rosy picture we have of the valley suggests that the supply and demand dynamics are going to mean that they've got an opportunity now, perhaps, ahead of another surge.
So just to kind of take a look at the whole, that there's still opportunity for appreciation. Yeah. And I think Arizona's an interesting market. And we've talked about this before, that we've had these dramatic ups and downs. And there's a lot of reasons for that. But we're not that market that's doing that anymore. So for whoever's waiting for housing prices to drop, 40%, don't sit around waiting for that, is what you're basically saying. That Arizona is not today's Arizona.
Yeah, and again, to piggyback on that, the drum I always like to beat is that markets are local. You buy subdivisions, you don't buy, broad-based markets. And so if you're a potential buyer, you need a good advisor that can help identify that market segment of interest, which may have a lot of opportunity based on if that supply is increasing relative to the demand, there's more opportunity.
For people who are considering making a real estate investment, either for their primary home, for a second home, or for an investment property, what other questions do you think those people should be asking right now as they're navigating that decision?
Well, I think a very fundamental question for the majority of us that need financing is to try to anticipate what might be happening. And again, what the smart folks say, is that they're looking at they'd like to see some softening, and there's some evidence of that. To the extent that the current policies at the federal level work, translating to putting a damper on inflation, interest rates being always the beast that fights inflation. That's the lever they pull. So if that moderates, then maybe we'll get a surprise. But meanwhile, if you had to say, what is the general consensus, it's for, mid-sixes, probably sustained for this year. And on the upside, if you can find the home you want and you'd like to have a lower rate, well, there's options like refinancing. If rates do drop significantly, you can always refinance. So I agree with you. It's usually time is your enemy when it comes to a real estate decision.
Right, and the idea that you could time it is actually pretty false too. Yeah. What is the thing that they like to say? Marry the house and date the rate.
Ooh.
Yeah,
Good.
There you go. So get your house, but refinance it when things look a little bit more favorable for that.
Yeah.
A lesson that we really need to learn is to listen more to the local news than the national news. And what I mean by that is I would almost say don't listen to any news. But what I mean by that is the news in Arizona is not the same as the news in the averaged out United States. We're really fortunate to be in a marketplace where the news is really pretty good and pretty favorable as it relates to real estate, our economy, home building, and all those good things. And so I like to encourage people to pay attention to the local news. And by the way, that was really important for us 10 or 15 years ago when the local news was not good because our news was worse than everybody else's. Yeah. So right now we're in the situation where our news is a lot better than a lot of markets. And so I think paying attention to the things that are driving this market are really important for people who are buying and selling their homes, to pay attention.
I love that.
Is that the lesson learned today? Watch the local news.
You got a gold star, because what that is that's taking off from the idea of my sense that local markets, in terms of residential markets, price range, you're buying into a subdivision in price range, not a city or a metro or whatever. And you're just by extension making the point that, what happens here in Arizona in the Valley could be wildly different from what's happening and what's getting reported in different parts of the country.
Just like you said, real estate is such a very, very local conversation. So, why are you looking at the national news to find out what's happening in your local market? And so, this is just one of those times where it's a great opportunity to look at the local market and just kind of see where we're headed. But it's also very interesting, I think, to see, as you talk about transitional and a slightly more balanced market, that really evens the playing field for everybody. So for people who want to sell their home, you're going to have to be competitively positioned. Yep. You're going to have to be showing your home, at its best light, and maybe be slightly negotiable. And if you're the buyer, you're going to need to have a pretty sharp pencil and know what you're looking at and be willing to pay a price. So it's kind of feels like a time where there's some fairness going on. Does that make sense?
It really does. And it's another invitation to, at least it prompts me to go back to, again, a former conversation where if I were to sort of chunk up and at the 30,000 foot level give an elevator speech on what characterizes the market today, it would be the disproportionate increase in inventory relative to demand. In other words, there's a lot of new inventory, not a lot of new houses, not new construction, but, well, that too, but there's more listings coming on than we've seen in a long time. We're starting to hit the 30-year typical amount of homes on the market, which, as you say, does create an opportunity for both sellers and buyers, but sellers do have to be careful in their pricing because they simply have more competition. But that translates to more opportunity for buyers with greater selection.
I want to go back to the thing that you said about the homes over 10 million up in the luxury corridor. Yeah. So this is the first time ever that we've seen that, right?
Yeah. I mean, it would be the one-off situation back just a few years ago, 4 or 5 years ago. What I'd noticed is that, again, post-COVID, when you saw money moving to the Valley, another phrase I like to say because it's just very self-evident, and that evidence shows up in the fact that the percentage of properties over $1 million has gone up dramatically in terms of the volume of total transactions. And so this is yet another component of that. Not only are the properties over $1 million in much more, it's a greater market, but that rarefied air over 10 million. And I know you've got a lot of insider sort of information on what's coming.
So this is very unscientific, what I know, because mine is just an observational narrative based on the clients that we talk to. So I know what's sitting on their drawing boards. I know what they're drawing. I know the clients they're talking to. I know what their clients are asking for. And I know this from just having conversations with the builders and architects around town. So all the houses that you can't even see yet. At Iconic Life magazine, we're seeing some of these houses, and they're spectacular, and they're huge, and they're exceptional, and they're expensive, and they're large, and everything. And that's the first time that we've ever really seen that here in Arizona. And I think a lot of the builders and architects are talking about, that's the influx of some of the people coming here, but it's also just kind of an influx of, some wealth is just getting, wealthier and wealthier. And so that's just driving these exquisite homes. And so that's been a really fun conversation for us to have with some of the builders and architects, because there are a lot of wow moments on the drawing boards. So as part of this conversation, we've talked a couple times about a buyer's market or a seller's market. How do you define that?
Yeah, and there's even an in-between place that you'd call a balanced market that we're sort of dancing with right now, because things are flowing from a dominantly last decade. It's been really a seller's market, screaming seller's market, moving toward balance, and in some cases more of a buyer's market. So the demarcation point, and that really is a good question, is to the extent that this is sort of the way we think about it in the industry, to the extent that you've got less than a 4-month supply of homes based on the pace of activity, then that would be considered a seller's market. Balance being in the 4 to 6 months average time to sell a property would be balanced. And then to the degree you get over 6 months, more of a buyer's market. You have to temper that, though, with when you're, again, breathing that rarefied air, that 10 million plus, that's the 1% or the 1% of the 1%.
Right.
And so that's a smaller target population. And anytime you got to watch the Italian hands here. Anytime you have a smaller target population, it tends to lengthen the market time. So that's a little bit of an outlier. So, for example, right now, properties over 10 million are selling at a pace of 3 to 4 a month. And there's about a 2-year supply.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Kind of fun question for you, because this is exactly what you do. But the whole world of Russ Lyon advisors, they have access to a guy named Mike Balzotti, who's the director of education at Russ Lyon. And Mike Balzotti spends at least 5, if not more days a week, reading the stats and all the good stuff, and then disseminating it down for us in a weekly report. Share with me your passion for educating the Russ Lyon real estate population. What do you want all of us to know?
Ooh, interesting question. So what I see is a lot of times it's the chunked up, that 30,000-foot view. And so I feel like my role is to help translate it to what would be the talking points to specific market segments that we serve. So that's a driver. I think I mentioned earlier, I tend to rail against the broad brush because things aren't general, they're specific. So that's a major component. My clients, the agents, are really sensitive to their clients, the buyers and sellers. And so oftentimes they're not, they rely on those of us who are doing the research to provide those talking points. And we also give them the tools to do their own, to teach the man to fish, so to speak, because we do have amazing resources. And so we'll spend time sort of prodding people to take the tools we have and apply them to the market segments they serve.
Yeah. And so when you look at the tools, I happen to know that there's quite a bit. So as it relates to, there's the weekly report, but then there's also a lot of training and there's speakers. Can you talk a little bit about the kind of education that's available to the advisors? And the reason I'm asking this is not from an advisor perspective, but from a potential client. This is the education your advisor's getting.
Well, what I truly love, this might sound like hyperbole, but it's from the heart. We have, as a company, Russ Lyon, Sotheby's International Realty, subscribed to the Ninja selling process and system, and it is a system. So we have processes for doing things that are tried and true. And from a consumer's point of view, the best thing about it is that the fundamental basis of it is, how can I bring value to every conversation?
Right.
How can I bring value? Yeah, I love that.
Nice. Well, good. Well, keep up the good work. Keep reading all the stuff. Keep geeking out on all the numbers. Keep boiling it down for us, because we appreciate getting it in layman's terms for sure.
I'm getting blue blocker glasses so I can, preserve the eyes.
That's a good idea. That's a very good idea. I know you're spending a lot of time on the computer. Well, thank you as always for sharing some great advice with us.
Treat. Thank you very much for the opportunity.
Josh, it's great to have you on the podcast today. I'm
you.
so excited to be chatting with you. So we first met just a couple years after you got into your real estate career, and you have been doing some really great things. Like, I take pride in watching your listings, and you've got some good ones.
Well, thank you. I've been very, very fortunate. We have some awesome clients that have given us great opportunities with some great properties. So
Yeah, you've got some really great ones. So it's been about 10 years for you since you got into real estate?
yeah, 10 years now, which is kind of hard to believe, but moving through it.
Time goes fast.
Yeah.
So why did you decide to get into real estate?
So I've always wanted to since I was very young. Like, my mom and I would go to open houses when I was like 15, 16 years old, and I just always loved homes. I was getting my business degree, and I just couldn't really figure out where I wanted to be, but I always knew I loved real estate. And so then I just kind of pivoted, got my license, and just got right into it. So I loved it.
Well, and you are quite an influencer in the Russ Lyon world. So how did you decide to join Russ Lyon?
So Russ Lyon was always my end-all goal. I always looked at it as kind of like the epitome of luxury real estate. And so I started out at little boutique brokerages, and then I kind of worked my way, and then finally had an amazing opportunity to be an assistant to a top agent. And so he kind of taught me everything from there. And so started at Russ Lyon from that point on, and been there for about, I think, over 6 years now. So
That's great.
Yeah.
Well, it truly is the luxury firm, so providing a great luxury experience. You talk about Thomas, your mentor. Tell me a little bit about what you learned from him.
Yeah, so Thomas was incredible. So he had been in the business for not actually that long when I first met him, but he had a lot of success very quickly on. He worked with Frank Azami on his team, and so when I met Thomas, he took me on as his assistant, and I basically worked hand in hand with him for 4 years. And so it was a great kind of partnership as well too with him. But he taught me everything. I mean, it was like he always kind of wanted to be able to have this concierge style approach to business, where we kind of were like the Ritz-Carlton, the Four Seasons, that we were basically able to do everything for our clients.
I love that.
And so we basically, if they had a question, we did it. And so it was never basically taking time from our clients. We wanted to be able to help them and assist them in any way. And so that's, presentation's big. I mean, how we even show a home is basically, is all detailed out. Like, if you see my business partner, Catherine, and I show a home, we show it exactly the same each time. We say the same thing at the same parts of the property, just so that we never mess it up. So it's kind of like a very beautifully orchestrated scenario. So.
Well, I think it's a great way to get started too, because by just passing the real estate exam, you do not know enough to be a real estate advisor, and I don't even know if you truly trust yourself at that point. To know what you're doing. So I think the opportunity to work with a great mentor is a wonderful thing, just to learn from them and kind of get your confidence and get some great experience, so that you know that when you're on your own, that you can provide a great service to your clients. So I think it's great. So I'm sure Thomas was sad when you decided to kind of work on your own.
No, yeah, but he was always great to me afterwards, so it all worked out. So
that's good. That's what a good working relationship was. Exactly. Is there one thing you can say that he taught you that goes through your head every single time you're showing a house?
Presentation is key. I mean, it's making sure every feature is like opened up, lit up, done up. I mean, it's just showing it in an immaculate way. Like, he was great about basically creating a show in a lot of ways, and so he did a great job with that.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of people who are asking themselves the question, like, everybody always wants to try to time the market, right?
Oh,
and
yeah.
we know that there's no such thing as that, because there's just no such thing as that. You've got to move and you've got to move. But if people were to say to you, is this a good time to buy? What would you say to that?
So I mean, like you had said as well,
it's
always a good time to buy, because the thing is, it's an investment. It's like we always had said, the market's cyclical, but it's a long-term investment. If you're going to be purchasing right now just to sell in a year or two, you're not going to make a profit. You're probably going to break even, maybe. So it's best if you're able to hold on to that asset for as long as possible, then you're good. You're always going to make a profit like 10 years from now, 15 years from now. But I always say, if you're looking to buy right now to sell in a year and make a huge profit, it's not going to happen. So
right.
Yeah, just got to be smart and savvy about it.
Yeah, it is funny. You take a look at every house you've ever owned, and it's like, they're doing pretty good.
I know,
Yeah.
exactly. Everybody looks back like, I shouldn't have sold that.
Yeah, exactly. And then for anybody who may have like concerns about, things that we're reading in the news, what do you tell your clients about that?
So I mean, it's like, with the good thing about Arizona is that our real estate market has just been, really good.
Yeah.
And so it's kind of thing. I mean, there's other parts of the country that aren't faring as well as we are, but we become this basically new destination for a lot of people. It's no longer a second home market. It's basically become a primary residence. And so, yeah, the headline might be a little bit nerve wracking, but it's looking good for us long term. It's like, I think with all the progression we're having in terms of all the building, all the amazing restaurants we have here, it's like that, we're basically creating this environment that's so fortunate for us.
Yeah, it is. And I like to tell everybody, don't read the national news, read the local news.
Exactly.
Because if you keep your head in the local news, that's really a much more enjoyable read right now.
100%, yeah.
Yeah, and the other thing is you take a look at a lot of our builders and architects and you ask them, I love to find out, I see some of the things that you don't see yet, right? So I know what's on the drawing boards, I know what's under construction or what's coming, and you take a look at that, and there are people who are on waiting lists that are willing to wait like another 2 years to even have their project started. So there's a whole pipeline of stuff that's coming through.
That's a cool thing. There's a lot of new construction coming on, and I mean, the homes that are going to be coming to market, or at least coming for custom builds, it's just going to make our area so much better. It's going to be incredible.
Yeah, a lot of beautiful stuff.
Yeah.
So in a very short amount of time, you actually could have a perspective on this marketplace of how things have changed even in the last 6 years. What have you seen?
Well, it's been very dramatic. It's like COVID was something we totally did not expect. 'Cause I worked for Thomas O'Leary, and so I saw a lot of the luxury listings prior to COVID, and things took long time to basically sell. It took over a year, and you basically would sell for 90% of list price, and then COVID happened and things were selling within days and for hundreds of thousands of dollars more than what they were listed for. And so it was so dramatic, and now we're kind of back to a normal balanced market that we're kind of seeing now. So definitely been very volatile over the last 6 years. So
yeah. Well, okay, so you've been reading Mike Balzotti's news you could use, because we're balanced market. I recognize that phrase.
Yeah. Except for the high-end luxury, that's still like a seller's market, which is so unbelievable. But everything under 2 million is kind of very much on a buyer's market, so it's crazy.
Yeah, I think this marketplace has been amazing. When I talk to people outside of Arizona, I talk about what a hot market this is, and with new construction, there's a lot of remodeling, there's a lot of people who are moving. So now that we're in that slightly more balanced market, what's your approach in working with clients or advising your sellers? What are you telling them to expect?
So with our sellers, we're really honestly have to be strategic. Like I always tell my clients, it's like we need to be priced appropriately and presented impeccably. And so like my business partner, Catherine, and I, we honestly do a whole go-to-market plan. And so it's like the house has to be presented as if it's almost like a new home. And so we basically kind of take anything that a buyer would see as like a defect and make sure that that's gone. And so I think if by doing that, you're gonna have less days on market and you're gonna get the most for your house. But I think a lot of agents will just basically put a home on the market just how it currently is. And that's what we're seeing, is just homes sitting and not doing as well.
It's really interesting what you were saying. That first 30 days is another thing that everybody at Russ Lyon talks about as being such a key important time. And I like the fact that you're preparing your seller to make the most of those first 30 days. What are some of the other things you're advising them to do?
So, I mean, like I was saying before, like the prep work, I mean, like even with this, I have a big listing right now we just brought on the market, and took 2 weeks prior to going to market, just the prep on the whole home. And so by doing that, it just basically the home just shows impeccably well at that point.
Do you have any sort of specialties or things that you like to do? You've been selling a lot of really big properties. Right. So is there a certain time of day that's the best time to sell it, or certain experiences that you feel are really helpful? Yeah,
so I mean, I definitely, it's like we all know, season is very important for the luxury market. A lot of our clients aren't here in the summer times like that, so really kind of taking advantage of season and not letting it get too far out. Like if we have clients that want to list and they're kind of on the fence, we say, well, let's get on right now, because basically we only have a few more months until we're in the summer season, and we're going to lose that opportunity for buyers. And then for showings like that, it's basically, we always want to have a great first impression for our clients, buyers that come through. And then going forward, we always invite people back for a sunset showing, because the house always glows in the evening, and it really is just special at that point.
Yeah, I totally agree.
Yeah.
Every house looks better at sunset
Oh,
time.
absolutely.
Yeah. So one of the things is Russ Lyon offers this really awesome global network. So you've got access to advisors from around the world, and you've got the ability to showcase these properties around the world. How do you take advantage of that for some of your bigger listings?
So a lot of them, we basically have advertised a lot with other agents, and we basically reach out to our sphere of agents that are outside of the state and basically just kind of get it in front of them as well too. I mean, we have so many clients that come from the East Coast, from Florida, from California, that are coming this way. And so why not basically get it out there and basically show it to these agents that might have that buyer that's going to be coming here. And so we really worked with just basically all the agents that we can get with and basically get it out there within the Sotheby's franchise.
Yeah. So what about a very sad story, but obviously, with the fires in California, I feel like there are people that are moving to a lot of places, but Arizona is one of those places. How are you helping some of those buyers find new homes?
Yeah, so we're actually seeing a big influx of California buyers and Palisade buyers, a lot of which basically their homes may have not been burned down from the situation, but they may have basically been displaced because of smoke damage or just being close enough that they just don't want to go back to that. Yeah. And so what we're seeing right now is we're seeing a lot of people come to town. They're getting a lot more for their money here. The Palisade lots were a lot smaller over there. Here you can get an acre of land. You can get a beautiful home in Paradise Valley or Scottsdale. And so we're just seeing a huge influx. And so it's basically just kind of guiding them and showing them the different neighborhoods that we have here and what we have to offer and finding them something similar within the desert landscape that would work for them.
Is it fun for you to sort of rediscover some of these neighborhoods? So you've lived here for a long time, right? So when I say Paradise Valley, you know what Paradise Valley is. Not everybody on the planet knows what Paradise Valley is. So now you're educating people on these wonderful communities that we have, and Scottsdale and North Scottsdale and Gilbert and Tempe and Chandler and Tucson and Flagstaff and all the incredible things that the state of Arizona has to offer. Are you kind of learning to re-love our community by teaching new people about it?
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, I really specialize in Paradise Valley and Scottsdale, but sometimes our buyers take us outside of our basically the geographical area that we're always in. So they take me out to like Gilbert and to Santan, and they see what's being developed out there. It's crazy. I mean, we've sold homes out in Surprise too, and with basically the TCM chip plant out there, you're just seeing this, the growth, and it's just crazy to see that. I mean, I lived here my entire life, and to see how basically it was there wasn't much outside of Phoenix, Scottsdale, Glendale, Peoria, and to see the growth here is just incredible. So it's fun to see. I mean, you go out and see these shopping centers that you never would have expected to be out there. It's just a whole other town and city. So
and I sometimes look at that and go, oh my gosh, how do we have enough people to service all of this? All of this retail is incredible. So you work in the high-end luxury real estate world, and so that means you're selling a lot of new homes, a lot of existing homes that have been built by what I like to call a dream team. So they've had a wonderful architect, they've had a wonderful builder, a notable builder, and a notable designer, certainly a notable architect as well. And at Iconic Life, we really like houses that have, a full team, because we feel like that sort of expresses the highest level of quality. What has been your experience in reselling some of these houses or putting some of these houses on the market?
Well, I think it's very special, and I have guided a lot of clients when they do build is to what we call a house with pedigree, to build a home with pedigree. Because basically, when you do go to resell, I mean, it's like people love the history. They love the idea of a story. And so, I mean, when you have a Mark Candelaria designed home that basically has this whimsical touch, people are drawn to it. And when it's built by a prominent builder in town as well too, it's like it's notable, and it does give credit. So it's fun. Like, we have one listing up in Silverleaf right now. It's a large estate, and it was built designed by Candelaria and then built by Tom Argue of Argue Custom Homes. And so it has this kind of feel of just quality and craftsmanship. So it's a very fun thing to be able to sell these kind of homes that have a history to it.
Do you have any sense, I know this is not a scientific question, but do you have any sense if these houses are bringing a higher value or a higher price if there is a pedigreed builder or architect on the project?
Yeah, so I always say it's like there's a lot of builders out there that have a cult following, and so people will only buy a home that was built by a certain builder or only designed by a certain architect. People have phenomenal designers that they keep that they want to stick with that same look, and so they follow that as well too. So I mean, you see homes like Nance Construction, which are which is just such whimsically done and just a quality craftsmanship, and they're very rarely do they come to market, and so when they do, people just jump on those homes. And so definitely with like basically a pedigree of builders and designers, people follow that and they love that. So it does help a home when it goes to market.
Yeah, for sure. It does add to a great story. Well, so that leads right into the next question too. So I find it interesting, we are writing about these houses all the time. So I feel like we're pretty well versed in some of the terminology about, groin vault ceiling or certain kinds of stone. Have you had to educate yourself on finishes to help? Because some houses have basic finishes, some have luxury finishes, and some have exotic, exquisite finishes.
Yeah.
So how do you present those things? And what have you done to learn more about that?
Yeah, so basically just luckily with in my career, basically just I went part of luxury home tour. And so I basically get the opportunity to just preview and see all the inventory that's in Paradise Valley. And so when you go through it, you start to kind of see what the better quality finishes are and stuff like that. And you can start to kind of decipher basically what's a good finish and what's a bad finish.
Yeah.
And so by educating yourself that way and kind of surround yourself with good builders and good architects and designers, they kind of help to kind of educate and just show this finish is a better quality here. And so you're able to actually show your clients that your worth. So when you're at a property, it's a resale property, you can basically say, this is basically a waterworks finish, basically over, let's say, a Kohler or something like that. You're able to kind of just detect what somebody went the extra mile on a finish versus something that's just basically just generic.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. So, just because of your age, I've got to ask you about technology.
Of course,
you're going to be in the real estate field for a very long time, and things are changing rapidly.
Very fast.
And I know at Russ Lyon, AI is just starting to launch with Leo. So how are you noticing some of these new technologies are impacting the world of real estate?
But technology definitely has basically evolved real estate. I think that the human interaction is very, very important still. And so I think that's one thing that I think, especially at Sotheby's that we have, that's great. But I do love the technology that's kind of going through. AI and ChatGPT has been kind of very helpful and just basically making things a little bit easier for us in ways. Like, I mean, I'm very much a good writer and I love to write and do descriptions. But it's like, it's nice that what you can take ChatGPT and basically enhance everything you've done and just take it to the next level. And so I've noticed that, but there's a lot more that I haven't learned yet.
I mean, I think there's so much coming too. And I think one of the big things is for all of us is to keep on top of some of the great technology that's out there. Are you utilizing social media a lot for your business?
I am. So I've always kind of like wanted to kind of keep a version of personal and business together. I think it's kind of more organic in a lot of ways, but I really just, I've always included all my real estate transactions and basically my open houses and everything like that, because I think it is good for people, your sphere, to see that you're consistently working. So I have clients that follow me and they just see that I'm still selling stuff and I'm still basically presenting homes for clients. So it's been fun, and people love the idea of seeing different architectures and different design elements. So it's been fun for me.
So what about what do you love most on a daily basis about what you do?
I love homes. I mean, the thing is, like, I've been very fortunate that I'm in the luxury world, and so basically Paradise Valley has been home to me for my entire life. And so to be able to see these homes that are out there that most people don't get an opportunity to get into, that's what I love to do. And then being able to have a client that appreciates just as much as I do, it's exciting. Because like, I have clients that kind of just buy homes for fun on occasion, and so I'll find this kind of like jewel box property that's off market that no one else gets to see, but I know they'll appreciate it. And so being able to connect my client with that property is just, it's amazing. So
that's very cool.
Yeah,
very cool. Well, it's so interesting because I feel like again at the magazine, we get to see amazing properties too, and sometimes it's almost like, do you ever just you feel like you've seen it all, and then you see something and you think, okay, I have not seen it all. What are some of the things that have stopped you in your tracks?
Well, it's just like every time I've said this about people in general, and then also now houses, it's just like you think you find your dream home, you think you find the best home you've ever seen, and then it's topped consistently. And so it's like, I mean, there's some designers, personal homes that I've been into that are just unreal. I mean, I sold Beth McGehee, as an interior designer here, and she sold her personal home in Casablanca, which was this little jewel box that was so special. I mean, it was spectacular. The finishes and everywhere you look was incredible. It just felt like charm. So being able to see stuff like that is just incredible. And it takes your breath away.
Yeah, it's amazing. It's really amazing, the work that's being done and the level of luxury. Well, so when you think about your real estate career, what's next for you?
So for me, I'm very, very fortunate to have an amazing business partner, Catherine Lewis. And so her and I have just kind of built this really boutique concierge kind of style team. And so her and I, we just work very hard at basically just finding the next best property and the next best thing for our clients. And so we've just had an incredible experience like that together. And so we're going to keep doing that and working our butt off on that. So
that's awesome. That's awesome. Well, perfect. Well, thank you for joining me today.
Of course. Thank you.
Thanks for joining me today, and thanks for taking time to watch our podcast. If you enjoyed today's podcast, please make sure to subscribe and hit the bell so that you are alerted to never miss an episode. And if you'd like to join our VIP list to receive our Iconic Estates newsletter, please go to russlyon.com, or the link is found in the show notes. I'd be so grateful if you'd take a moment to rate and review this podcast. Until next time, I'm Renee Dee. See you then.